You notice something about yourself. Not for the first time, for the 100th time, the same thing, in the same way, with the same clarity that changes nothing. You saw the pattern. You named it. You understood exactly why you do what you do. And then you watched yourself do it again. The analysis becomes the action. Say that again. The analysis becomes the action, meaning the time you spent thinking about the conversation you need to have is the time you spent on the conversation. The time you spent planning the work is the time you spent working. The time you spent understanding why you can't start is the time you spent not starting. Every loop is complete. Every loop is satisfying. Every loop ends exactly where it began, with full understanding and no movement. And the understanding is real. That's the worst part. You're not fooling yourself. The analysis is accurate. The insight is genuine. It just doesn't go anywhere. It was never going to go anywhere. The loop is functioning perfectly. That was the point. You already do this. That's the problem. Not occasionally, not under stress. As a default mode. The thinking that replaces the doing. The analysis that becomes the thing you did today instead of the thing you were supposed to do. We are not going to explain why this happens. You already know why. You've explained it to yourself more times than you can count. That explanation didn't help. Neither will this one. But something in you keeps looking for the explanation anyway. That's the other part of the problem. The looking is the loop. The looking is already the loop. The thinking that replaced the living. Part 1, the loop. Here is what the loop looks like. You have something you want to do, or something you know you should do, or something you've been meaning to do for longer than you want to admit. And instead of doing it, you think about it, which feels productive. Thinking feels like preparation. Thinking feels like getting closer. But the thinking generates more thinking. The preparation reveals more to prepare for. The analysis uncovers new variables that need to be analyzed. And somewhere in the middle of all that, the original thing, the doing, quietly becomes the thing you'll get to once the thinking is done. The thinking is never done. That's not a bug. That's the design. The loop doesn't malfunction. The loop works exactly as intended. It keeps you in place while making you feel like progress. The analysis becomes the action. Say that again. The analysis becomes the action. Meaning, the time you spent thinking about the conversation you need to have is the time you spent on the conversation. The time you spent planning the work is the time you spent working. The time you spent understanding why you can't start is the time you spent not starting. Every loop is complete. Every loop is satisfying. Every loop ends exactly where it began, with full understanding and no movement. And the understanding is real. That's the worst part. You're not fooling yourself. The analysis is accurate. The insight is genuine. It just doesn't go anywhere. It was never going to go anywhere. That was the point. Someone is watching. Part 2, the observer. You are never fully in the room. There is always a part of you standing slightly outside it, watching, noting, recording the data of your own experience as it happens. You say something. The observer notes what you said and evaluates whether it was good. You feel something. The observer categorizes it and checks whether the feeling is appropriate. You're in a conversation. The observer is watching the conversation and composing a real-time analysis of how it's going. This is not pathological. This is intelligence. This is the capacity for self-awareness that separates you from what? From people who are just in the room, unobserved, present, without the commentary track. This is where it connects to the screen. You have been observed your whole life. Now you observe yourself the way a screen observes you. You post. The observer notes the posting and monitors the response. You feel something. The observer asks, "Is this postable?" You have an honest reaction. The observer asks, "How would this look?" The screen didn't create the observer. The screen just gave the observer a mirror it was already looking for, a place to watch itself watching itself. You are never alone in your own head. The observer is always there, taking notes, running analysis, making sure nothing happens unreviewed. You can't turn it off. You've tried. The trying generates more observation. The observer watches you try to stop observing and files that too. This is where it connects to the screen. You have been observed your whole life. Now you observe yourself the way a screen observes you. You post. The observer notes the posting and monitors the response. You feel something. The observer asks, "Is this postable?" You have an honest reaction. The observer asks, "How would this look?" The screen didn't create the observer. The screen just gave the observer a mirror it was already looking for, a place to watch itself watching itself. You are never alone in your own head. The observer is always there, taking notes, running analysis, making sure nothing happens unreviewed. Nothing feels chosen. Part 3. The verdict. Here is what too much consciousness produces. Not wisdom, not clarity, not better decisions. The inability to believe in any decision. You see all the options. You understand all the trade-offs. You can articulate exactly why any choice you make is also a choice against something else worth choosing. So nothing feels right. Not because nothing is right, because right requires a certainty you've analyzed away. The person who acts without full information can believe in their action. You have full information, or close enough, and the information tells you that every action is provisional, every commitment is arbitrary, every yes is also 100 no's you can fully describe. And then there is the other problem. Even after you choose, even when the loop finally breaks and you do the thing, the observer is still there, watching, asking, "Did you really choose that? Or did you choose it because you thought you should? Or because you knew you were being watched? Or because it fit the narrative you've been building about who you are?" The verdict arrives after every action, not just before. You say something honest. The observer asks, "Was that actually honest, or did you perform honesty because it suited the moment?" You make a brave choice. The observer asks, "Was that courage, or was it the desire to see yourself as courageous?" The authenticity question never closes. The observer never stops asking, and the asking makes every answer suspect. The underground man knew this. He didn't call it a problem. He called it consciousness. The direct man acts. The conscious man watches himself act and doubts the acting and doubts the doubting and then doubts that too. This is not weakness. This is what clarity costs. The person who can't see themselves can move without friction. You see yourself. You see the friction. You see the friction generating more friction, and you sit with it. Not because you gave up, because you're still analyzing whether sitting is the right response. It probably isn't. You already know it isn't. You've known for a while. The knowing hasn't produced movement. It's produced more knowing, which produces more sitting, which is where you are now, still sitting, still analyzing the sitting, quite accurately. There is no resolution here. That's not a failure of the video, that's the point. The underground man didn't resolve. He didn't find a method. He didn't develop a practice for quieting the observer and finally living fully. He kept writing. He kept analyzing. He kept producing more consciousness about his consciousness. Because the only way out is through a door, the observer won't stop examining. You know this. You've known it for a while. The knowledge hasn't helped. It wasn't supposed to. Knowing the shape of the trap is not the same as leaving it. You're still in the room. The room is very well described. The loop doesn't break from the inside. That's not pessimism. That's the underground man's actual contribution. He didn't say, here's how to escape. He said, here's what it looks like in here. And the looking, the accurate, unsparing, relentlessly conscious looking, is the only thing he had. It might be the only thing you have too. Not here, not in an analysis. In the next moment when you catch yourself thinking instead of moving. Just notice it. You're already noticing it. That's the problem. That's also all you have. You thought about it. You're still thinking about it. That's the problem.